As a landscape and wildlife photographer, I'm out today with what I think could be my dream lens. This is the OM SYSTEM 50 to 200mm f2.8. So I'm hoping to do some photography today, get some nice images, and I'll talk about why I think this lens could be a fantastic addition to my kit. My name is Wayne Robertson and I'm a landscape and wildlife photographer based in Scotland. As part of my developing relationship with OM System, thank you to them for providing me with this lens for use in this video and my own photography. The concept of this video and the views I express are entirely my own. As a photographer, I'm really passionate about both landscape and wildlife photography, and I want to break down these two genres separately at first to talk about why I think this lens is so good for both. Speaking about landscape first, many years ago when I started landscape photography, if I was using a full frame camera, I always liked to have a telephoto lens, and typically that would be a 70 to 200mm lens. Fantastic lens, still very popular and very useful today. But what I found is that quite often that focal length wouldn't be enough for me, the maximum of 200mm on a full frame camera, which would be 100 on my Micro Four Thirds here. And soon after that I decided to look at and invest in lenses with a longer focal length, and I found this to be extremely useful for my landscape photography. You know, often a subject or a scene could be further away and you want to isolate it and you need a bit more focal length. It can often be something that's a bit closer and you really want to zoom in tight, and having that extra reach can be of great benefit. Same as if you're framing up perhaps a few leaves on a tree or whatever, those more intimate details. So when I switched to OM System, I bought the 40 to 150mm f4 lens. Absolutely fantastic lens, small, light, great image quality, and one that I use regularly and will continue doing so. But this lens, the benefits it offers me over that lens is a bit more reach, and of course the f2.8 aperture. Now that can be quite useful at times. I wouldn't say it's essential for landscape photography, but it's very nice to have in a high quality lens such as this. So I can keep my ISO down at times when I'm shooting in low light, and the f2.8 aperture also gives me a few more creative opportunities. So all in all, I think this is going to be an absolutely fantastic lens for my landscape photography. Now, speaking about being able to zoom into distant parts of the landscape and isolate a scene, up in this area here there is a peak which is looking incredibly moody today. We've got lots of low cloud rolling over it. It's almost glowing a little bit, and the scenery, the ridges underneath it are incredibly dark and they're not getting much light. But that little area there, isolated by zooming in on this lens, I think will make for quite an interesting and moody image. So I talked a little bit about my landscape photography. Why would I want to use this lens here for my wildlife photography? At the moment I'm using the OM SYSTEM 150 to 400mm lens, which can reach 500mm with its built-in teleconverter, and that is a stunning lens. It's a lens I'll use, 99% of the time I'm out for my wildlife photography, but there are times I need a shorter focal length, and that's where this lens here will come in. So starting at 50mm, that's 100 in full frame terms, I'm able to take, wildlife that's much closer to me, or alternatively take in more of the environment. Lots of interesting stuff which I'm unable to do with my current lens. Also, the f2.8 aperture is incredibly useful. I can be a bit more creative at times, shallower depth of field. I can also, when the light levels are low, so perhaps I'm shooting wildlife in a woodland, or it's a dull, overcast, rainy day, or it's at the beginning or the end of the day where light levels are low, this lens will give me some real benefits. Now, I've got the 40 to 150mm f4 lens, which is useful for wildlife. However, this, with the specs that I've just mentioned, is a much better lens in my opinion for wildlife photography, much more useful. And also the autofocus on this lens here, the autofocus motors will be much quicker. So it's just going to perform better all round for my wildlife photography. I've been taking a landscape image here, and this is a good example of how I would utilise the f2.8 aperture on this lens. So off somewhere, I think it's about there, there's this beautiful, I think it's a silver birch tree off in the distance, and there's some nice background to it as well with some trees up on a hillside. And just near my feet here, there's some green, plants and other things growing. So there's a few different green tones in this image. But what I'm trying to do is get myself in the camera really low, open up the aperture to its maximum of f2.8, and I'm trying to blur the foreground and put my focus basically on the tree in the distance. So there's going to be hopefully a little bit of a sense of depth to the image, and yeah, I think it should turn out hopefully quite nice. Immediately after taking this landscape photo, I noticed a duck flying past, and I had perhaps 2 seconds to capture it. I'll talk later in the video about why I like the 50 to 200mm lens for situations such as this, and how I use a feature on my OM1 Mark II camera to help me capture such fleeting moments. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I feel this could be my dream lens as a landscape and wildlife photographer, and I wanted to explain that a little bit more. When I'm heading out to do landscape photography, if I want to have all my kit with me and be prepared for whatever type of scene I encounter, I always want to have a telephoto lens with me. When I'm going out to do wildlife, I of course want a telephoto lens with me as well. And I think this lens, with the quality of the images that it can produce, it's an extremely high quality lens. It's very capable for both genres. But increasingly, I want to head out on hikes. I've been doing this for a number of years now, but I want to head out on hikes and be prepared for both genres. So if I see something for landscape, I want to have the gear with me that I need. And if I see a wildlife opportunity, I want to have the gear with me that I need. And I think this is where this lens is going to be my dream lens. I can come out with this on, say, my OM1 Mark II, and I'm going to be prepared to do both landscape and wildlife extremely well. It's a very high quality lens. It's going to take sharp, detailed images, for both genres. For wildlife, it's got really fast autofocus. The f2.8 aperture, as I touched on earlier, is handy for both genres. And I can take a teleconverter or two with me, which would be used for the wildlife photography. So what a fantastic lens, and yeah, I really do believe this is my dream lens. So I've been out for a few hours, and something that's really striking me about this lens today, I've had it around my neck the whole way today as I've been walking around, and it's just been incredibly comfortable. To be honest, I've not really been aware that it's there. It's not the lightest OM system lens, but for an f2.8 aperture in this focal length range, I think it feels incredibly light. Also striking to me is just how comfortable it is to hand hold. I've got a small tripod with me purely for doing this video, but I'm not shooting any of my photography today on a tripod. It's all handheld, and what a joy this lens is to use handheld. I think if you've used it, perhaps any of you watching, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it is such a nice lens to shoot handhold. But anyway, off in the distance, I think it's somewhere up here, there's some really nice trees at the edge of the water, and there's some quite moody conditions at the moment. So I'm going to get this shot and I'll show it to you. So the last 30 minutes or so have been incredibly rewarding and fun for me using this lens, and I think it's a good example of why I've said this is my dream lens. And what I was talking about earlier has just came true. So I've been photographing this scene behind me here, and I need to be careful of a couple of things. It's incredibly moody. I think it's going to be a good photograph, but because I'm shooting with telephoto focal lengths, I need to be careful of where I'm focusing and my aperture, and I also need to be mindful of shutter speed because there's quite a strong wind. I want a nice sharp image, and I want it all in focus from front to back. But I've been able to do that, I think, and I think it's going to be an image that I really like. And also in the last 30 minutes, as I've been walking along, there's been a number of small birds. They've been flying around, hovering, they've been landing in the heather, landing on some rocks. And I really enjoy photographing wildlife smaller in the frame, taking in a bit of the environment. So this lens has been performing incredibly well. I've been shooting at f2.8, and using the custom modes on top of my camera here, I'm quickly able to switch to my wildlife settings, seen fleeting opportunities and got some images that I'm quite pleased with, and then switching back to my custom mode for landscape photography. So for me, this is why this is a dream lens. It's letting me do that type of thing. The small birds, if I didn't have this focal length, they would have been a bit too small. They're small in the frame, but they're the way I want them. But if I only had my lens that goes to 150mm, they would have been a bit smaller. So I'm really pleased with that. But that's the beauty of a lens such as this for me as a landscape and wildlife photographer. You just never know what opportunity is going to present itself, and I really feel this helps me be ready for both. Today has been an absolutely fantastic experience with this lens, the OM System 50 to 200mm f2.8. And after today's shoot, I feel incredibly happy. I haven't seen the images, of course, but I think I'm going to be really impressed with them on the computer. And yeah, it's let me do so much today, mainly landscape. I've done a little bit of wildlife as well, and it's just been a joy to shoot with this lens. It's been incredibly easy to carry around with me, and as I said earlier, what a joy to handhold and use this lens. I'm sure 99% of the time I'll be shooting handheld with this, unless I've got a very special need to use a tripod. The lens has got Sync IS, so shooting handheld is just fantastic. And it's just been a joy. I truly believe after today's experience, this is my dream lens. As always, I'd like to take a second to thank you for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed seeing me use this lens and a few of the images that I've captured. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch as always, and I hope you'll join me in my next video.